Hello and welcome to the Inner Sense channel. In this interview, I'm delighted to have Dr. Aleksandra Herman, a cognitive neuroscientist and visiting associate professor at the University of South Australia. Dr. Herman's work focuses on the effect of bodily signals on our behaviour and decision making. She also investigates what happens when brain-body communication goes wrong in conditions such as persistent pain. During this interview, we cover her recent research on the emBODY tool, which I found incredibly enlightening. It's a real challenge sometimes to explain to people what we are experiencing in our body in relation to external events and our emotions. We talked about how research with the emBODY tool could enhance interpersonal relationships and empathy, and I learned about Dr. Herman's personal thoughts on the future of research on interoception. I hope you enjoy this fascinating conversation, and don't forget to subscribe to the Inner Sense channel for more insightful interviews and discussions on tools to improve your own interoceptive awareness and well-being. Thank you very much. Hello, Aleksandra. Thank you very much for joining us on the Inner Sense channel.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me. It's a great pleasure.
It doesn't cease to amaze me how these days with email and video conferencing, we can reach out to people on the other side of the planet and within a matter of days be meeting face to face, even though it is via screens. And you, I often say on the other side of the planet, but you literally are on the other side of the planet to me. I'm in England, in Australia.
Yes, I'm currently in Australia, in beautiful Adelaide. It's middle of the winter here, but today we have 19 degrees, so this is winter. I could easily get used to. So.
And you're from Poland, is that correct?
I'm originally from Poland, yes, but I traveled a little bit during my professional career, and I previously lived for several years in Britain.
Oh, okay. Whereabouts in Britain were you?
First Cardiff, then Brighton, and finally in London.
Oh, wow.
Here and there.
Yes, yeah, nice, a nice mixture. So we're here today to talk about something called the emBODY tool, and I saw a paper about the research you've done using this tool recently, and it kind of really piqued my interest. Because it's all about what we talk about on this channel, which is how we kind of feel and express bodily sensations. So I'm really looking forward to talking about the background to this tool and your work, and the sort of highlights of your research, and then maybe some of the kind of related discussions or topics about this very interesting but often kind of difficult to talk about precisely with different groups of people, about how we sense and express our emotions and what's really going on. So first of all, maybe you can start with explaining how you became interested in the study of bodily sensations and emotional experience.
So my path to research I'm doing at the moment has not been straightforward. But essentially, I decided I wanted to do a PhD, and I was very much interested in how emotions themselves affect our actions and behaviors. And during my research, we wanted to try to see how different emotions, such as happiness, anger, sadness, etc., influence particularly impulsive behaviors. But very quickly, it became apparent that even though we are able to successfully manipulate people's mood states, we don't see clear-cut differences in behaviors as we would expect. So, for example, that we were thinking that inducing positive emotions in people would lead to people behaving less impulsively, whereas inducing anxiety in people might be acting more impulsively as a means of either depleted of self-control resources or as a means of improving their emotional state. But what we saw instead was that we saw differences in behavior depending on subjective changes in how participants felt. So the shift in the emotions was correlated with changes in behavior as well. So with that, we became very much interested in looking at how people actually perceive their bodily states, which led me to interception research. And then following my PhD, I joined the lab of Manos Tsakiris, whom I know you also interviewed for this channel some time ago. I worked with him as a postdoc, to continue my research on how bodily states and bodily signals can influence actions and decisions. And then I moved to Lobby in the Nensky Institute, where we're doing also this type of research, but also doing more research in neuroimaging, neuroplasticity, and also this sort of side project looking at actually climate change emotions. So how what emotions people feel in relation to climate change, and how we can also use emotional responses to promote pro-environmental behaviors.
Wow. So some big topics there: climate change, and what was the other one I've noticed in the paper as well? It was climate change and pandemic as well. You talked about in the paper. So yeah. How we're reacting to these big sort of threats to the whole planet, really. Going back to what you said about manipulating moods, how was that done? Just out of interest.
So mood can be manipulated in various ways. You can show people sort of short movie clips. You can ask them to recall some emotional events, their own personal sort of history. You can ask them to read stories. We chose sort of a mixture of methods of like showing them different emotional stimuli paired with music. And for anxiety induction, we also were quite mean. We asked participants to do a very stressful maths task and time pressure with also some unpleasant sounds in the background.
Okay. So it is actually giving them, real stimuli. I didn't know if it was through some kind of chemical or magnetic stimulation of the brain or something, but you're actually presenting them with stimuli and something to watch or hear or so on. Okay. Very interesting. So the emBODY tool, actually, no, first of all, before we go on to that, do you have any, so you've been studying this for a long time now, in lots of different ways, and do you have any personal experiences of how paying attention to your own bodily signals or communicating them with others has maybe helped you?
That's a difficult question. I think that this is something that we do sort of every day in our everyday interactions and our daily behaviors. But I've definitely started paying more attention to actually what my body is telling me, and whether this is something purely physiological, like for example, is some tension in my stomach just a sign of hunger, let's say, or is it maybe that I'm uncomfortable with some sort of situations. So yeah, I've just learned to from time to time just take a little bit break and listen to what my body is actually telling me, and trying to identify what it actually means.
So okay, so it's sort of being curious about what the sensations might be caused by, rather than
might be caused by, and what they mean as well, because I think that this is very very important.
What they mean and what they might be caused by. Okay. Right. So the emBODY tool, can you sort of briefly explain what the tool is and what the purpose of the tool is?
Yeah, sure. So the emBODY tool has been developed by a group in Finland by Numanmaa and colleagues. And it essentially allows people to report their bodily sensations related to different emotions or physiological sensations. So essentially, instead of asking people, hey, how do you feel now or in any particular situation, participants are presented with two outlines of human body and are asked to color in where they feel their bodily activity increasing or getting stronger or decreasing while they experience different emotions, such as, for example, happiness, sadness, anxiety, etc. And it has been used successfully in various studies and also different cultures. And it showed that there are unique bodily sensation maps of emotions. So we can identify different localizations of sensations related to, for example, happiness that is distinguished from sadness, etc., etc. So those sort of localizational fingerprints of emotions, if you will. But importantly, these differences can be easily recognized at the group level. So if we pool sort of or average those body sensation maps across groups of individuals, but it may be less pronounced at the individual levels. And actually what we see is that there are actually big individual differences in how people experience emotions in their bodies. So this is a sort of short introduction to emBODY tool.
I think that's a really kind of you've touched on some really important thing there, this, which we may come back to later, about this debate about whether how we do classify emotions at all. So what I hear you saying there is that there's a lot of variety between people about where the location and the type of activation or deactivation that's associated with a particular description we give to an emotion, like happiness or fear. It can change a lot between individuals, but if you take a large enough group of people, you will start to see some sort of pattern emerging.
Yes, and interestingly, we see that also across different populations, different countries, different languages, different cultures, so East and West. So it seems that there is some underlying biological, let's say, cause for it, because otherwise, I guess, in different cultures, we could see like bigger differences, but this is actually very much overlapping.
So, yeah, even though there's cultural differences and differences in language, then quite possibly there's a biological reason why things are felt in a certain way or experienced in a certain way. Yes, it'd be nice to hear your thoughts about that later. So in the paper which pointed me towards your work and encouraged me to get in contact with you was about using this tool to investigate complex emotions like climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic. So can you summarize the findings of that study, or maybe explain a little bit about how you went about what the method was as well in the study?
Yeah, sure. So this is a large-scale project looking at climate emotions that is done in two countries, Poland and Norway, because both of these countries heavily depend on fossil fuels, but they have various sort of different attitudes towards environment, etc., and in their policies. So the idea is to sort of study what general population in both of these countries feel in relation to climate change, and then how we can use people's emotions to encourage pro-environmental behaviors. And the first thing that we need to do in order to do this research is somehow assess or quantify emotions related to climate change. And what we wanted to do is develop a tool, a questionnaire measure to do it. And the first step to sort of try to do this questionnaire is to first talk to individuals who are highly concerned with climate change and talk about their emotions, what may be causing them, etc., etc. So we did interviews both in Poland and in Norway with individuals highly concerned with climate change. But it turned out that it was very challenging, even though we talked with individuals who self-reported high worry and concern towards climate change. There was actually a variety of emotions that they all self-reported, both positive emotions and negative emotions. So people were very often reporting anxiety about the future, worrying for the future of their own and their children. They also expressed loads of anger for politicians and those in power, but also quite often reported, for example, joy or happiness from the fact that more and more people are concerned and think that climate change is an important issue. They had great joy and sense of community from taking climate action with other people. So joining different organizations that work for climate. So it's generally it was a very sort of those interviews uncovered a great plethora of emotions, and then we thought like, okay, so if people who are actually very highly concerned about climate change show such great, enormous plethora of emotions, what happens with individuals who are sort of less concerned, or maybe less knowledgeable also about this topic? What about people, for example, who are climate change denialists? How do we actually approach this topic? So given that also emotions are quite often a difficult topic to talk about, and people may have difficulty naming their emotions or know exactly what they felt, what they feel, we thought that we may need another tool and a different way to sort of approach the topic. And this is where we decided to use emBODY tool, not to ask people about, so how do you feel about climate change, but instead ask them to draw it, basically show us what they feel when they think about climate change. Because this method has not been tested in that context, we thought that, okay, we should also verify whether, if we ask people to do it, it would be the body maps that we get would be somehow differentiated from emotions people would be reporting, but bodily sensation people would be reporting for other important phenomena, such as, for example, COVID-19 pandemic, but also we included there war and some more pleasant experiences, such as summer holidays or friendship. And also to sort of verify our approach, we also separately ask participants to do the body maps task for several basic and complex emotions, such as happiness, anger, anxiety, and so on and so forth. And essentially what we found is, first, we replicated previous findings related to body maps of emotions, which sort of proves that generally this approach works. And even though we conducted the study in Polish, everything sort of everything works and is replicable, which gives us more confidence to our new novel findings regarding body maps of phenomena. But what we found regarding that is, again, that we were able to identify those unique bodily sensation maps for climate change, for COVID-19, and for other phenomena that we studied in this procedure. So, in other words, what this research shows is that this emBODY tool may be useful to study also not only strictly emotions, but also more complex emotions related to different important global phenomena. And since this is quite a fun task to do, much more stuff engaging than giving people, long, lengthy questionnaires. It may be useful and quick way to study it in the future in various different populations, not only adults, but perhaps even children.
Yeah. So if it can be done, I guess, on a distance on a smartphone, can it?
Yes, this is all online app. We used it online as well in our research. So yeah, it's very easy to do, very easy to as long as someone has a computer or smartphone app, they can do the task online very quickly.
And I want to ask a couple of questions about the climate change reactions to climate change in the moment. But just to go back to the actual using the tool. So you have two blank pictures of the body, and on one you draw where on your body you feel more activated, and on the other one where you feel deactivated. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
yes.
Do you find people do you actually use those words, activated and deactivated, or the equivalent in Polish and Norwegian?
Yes, so the exact instruction is for the right body, color in where you feel your activity increasing or getting stronger, and for the other one where your activity is decreasing or getting weaker. And this may sound a little bit vague, but what we found, well, these are the original instructions, but actually when we try to modify them a little bit or specify what it meant, it actually caused a lot of confusion as well. So we decided just to go with the original instructions as they were.
And do the participants know they're part of a study looking into emotion, or are they just told? Do they just turn up and say where your body is more active and less active? Do they know it's going to result an analysis about emotion?
So in this particular study, we told participants at the beginning that this is a study about where in the body they feel different emotions related to also different phenomena, without specifically telling them that it's climate change or COVID, because this could perhaps discourage some people from taking part in the study. We wanted to have quite a broad range of individuals with different views on the topic.
Yeah. This is one of the things I spend some time each week working as a manual therapist for people with different sort of chronic pain, sometimes persistent pain, sometimes other health conditions. And I also run a few sort of small groups for people with chronic conditions. And we often talk, we often try to explain how we feel in different circumstances, usually positive circumstances. So if you're feeling supported, where do you feel that in your body, and so on. And I find that there's quite a lot of variation between how well people are able to locate things in their body. Sometimes if you use an emotion word, it kind of gets in the way a little bit. Whereas if you just talk about, like you say, activation or deactivation, or where do you feel, kind of let them choose the words, like maybe I feel a bit fizzy or a bit tight, or, so it's, I think that it's really like the simplicity of that tool. Where is there more activity or less activity? And do you find it? I don't know if this is within the scope of how you were involved in the work, or if you actually spoke to people face to face. But are there some people who is there a variation in how easy people find the task? So do some people find it very easy to locate activity, and other people find it very difficult to locate activity?
Oh yes, certainly. There is a huge variability in how difficult people find it, and we actually do measure it usually as well with at least one question. But it's also quite interesting, like the feedback we got from some of the participants, that this was actually for some of them the very first encounter with thinking about emotions in sort of embodied way, that they never really thought about where they feel emotions when they experience them, whereas other people were really found it very interesting because they had very clear perception of how different emotions feel, where they feel in the body, and for them it was very easy. So there is huge variability in that as well, also in this difficulty and of the percept, like also how widespread the sensations are. Some people drew very detailed, very localized sensations, whereas other people colored virtually the whole body. So there is certainly something that people, the feelings related to different emotions are very different across individuals.
Yeah. At the same time, if you get enough people, you do start to see a pattern. So that is really, really interesting. So I had a question about the climate change, but I think it's gone now. Oh, so when you said you approached people who were sort of concerned and interested about climate change, and maybe already taking action, there was quite a lot of variety there. Did you look at the people who, what the pattern was amongst the people who weren't interested in climate change, or the deniers? What was the pattern that emerged? Did it look the same as the body map for the people who were concerned?
For this particular study, we did not actually assess sort of the climate change beliefs, simply because it wasn't only study related to climate change. It also looked at various different phenomena. But yes, it is a very interesting question to see. I would expect that there should be some differences, but it would be very hard for me to say how they would actually how they would be visible, because I can also feel that, for example, climate change deniers would have very strong feelings towards the whole problem, but it may be just different emotions with different pattern.
Yeah, it would be very interesting to see. I mean, I've got a kind of as you were describing the range of emotions that the climate people who are interested in climate change, it actually reassured me that I'm not maybe crazy for having all these all these mixed feelings about, feeling excited that more people are taking action, but worried about, small young members of our family who've got to grow up with this. So maybe it's no surprise that big world events like this, or any event, can be multidimensional when we think about it in terms of short-term and long-term impacts. Fine. So I want to talk a little bit about move on to some of the theories within the scientific community about emotion, and how your work aligns or doesn't align with those theories. In the introduction to the paper, you referred to the conceptual act theory, which states that bodily sensations we experience in different circumstances undergo our individual interpretations, i.e., they are constructed depending on external and internal triggers and our individual past experiences within the constraints of language. Therefore, the emotions, for example, fear, anger, or happiness, are the meanings that we assign to the bodily states we feel using a specific language and cultural norms in the language it is embedded in. So for me, that makes sense. We feel something, we experience something, and then we create a story to kind of make sense of it and to communicate it with other people. However, do you have any thoughts about why, if we've evolved emotions, evolved the ability to feel our bodily state when something is happening that's really important to us, or related to our values and concerns about what's going on in the world, why do we still find it so hard to kind of decipher and articulate them clearly? So, for example, if I see, a red apple and a green apple on the table, I can say, oh, there's a red round apple over there, or a long yellow banana. I can do that quite clearly. But with emotions or felt bodily sensations, it does seem, as we've just talked about, there is this it's kind of fuzzy, and we can't we can't create these clear pictures to communicate. Why do you think that might be?
Well, I think that one of the reasons might be that, we are never taught specifically how to name our emotions. Many people have very kind of narrow vocabulary to name different emotions. They would say, oh, I feel bad or I feel good. But, there is a whole plethora actually of words that describe different emotions. And actually, Lisa Feldman-Barrett, which is a very known person, a researcher in the field of emotions, talks about this emotional granularity, that our language and how precisely we can name different feelings. This is something very important for our well-being and to communicate our emotions. And also by naming precisely what we feel, we are better able then to cope with it. So I think that one thing is that we are quite bad about talking about our emotions, simply because we never taught how to do it. So this is maybe one reason. Another reason that I think it may be the case is that, we evolved in a completely different environment that we live in nowadays. And those sort of basic emotions, so to speak, fear and anger, these are quite were felt in a situation of danger, imminent danger. Whereas now our context is so much different, and our sort of brains and the whole physiology, the anatomy and so on and so forth doesn't sort of catch up so quickly with how the environment around us changes. And I think that simply now we just feel many more different emotions, or emotions in different contexts, and maybe this change makes us so difficult, make it for us so difficult to sort of identify what we feel.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. So if I've heard that correctly, one aspect may be that we're just not used to, we haven't practiced the skill of sort of feeling them, locating them, and describing them to other people. It's not common to do that in our culture. And the other reason maybe is because we're such complex organisms with such incredible capabilities. We were able to imagine what climate change might mean in 10 generations time, or I always like to sort of think, what was it like for a single-celled organism or an amoeba to have an emotional experience, move away from a predator, or to move towards some food, and maybe that would be easier to describe than something like, oh, I've missed the last bus home and might be tired for my exam tomorrow. It's yeah. So okay. So could the emBODY tool be used, do you think, to help address this problem over time? Is that one of the plans for the tool, or where do you think can
I think that emBODY tool has generally great potential to be used in clinical practice. For example, we are currently sort of in the process. I have a paper under review now that looks at people's bodily sensations and in terms of different emotions in context of alcohol use. there is a lot talk about alexithymia in context of alcohol use. So this sort of a feature of difficulty in identifying and naming emotions in self as well as in others. This topic is sort of more and more discussed in context of alcohol research. And I think that, for example, using embodied tone in therapy practice to sort of help people identify what they feel, differentiate between different emotions, to teach this emotional granularity, and maybe also help to identify different emotions instead of asking participants to sort of name what they feel, but actually color it and then try to sort of that way teach participants different sort of names to identify those emotions. That might be very helpful. I think it has a great potential. I don't think it has been directly tested yet, but I strongly believe that it has good potential.
Yeah, you can imagine over time if it was kind of open source and this data was measured in real time, and it could, not only could it help individuals, but could get a clearer picture of those patterns which are already starting to emerge from your study and others to help kind of find out what, under all kinds of different circumstances, not just about climate change or these big events, but just to build up a picture of how our bodies react, or how we experience our bodies to react to different situations.
The tool actually is already open source, so the individuals who created it were very generous and made it available. So it is open source, and I think that quite a few groups, at least around the world, are using it in context of different studies. So
Fantastic. Okay, so do you, I've jumped around a little bit with the questions. Do you have any kind of things you'd like to say about the study, that we think important things you think I might have missed?
About this particular study?
Or any.
No, I think that or any study. I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure, like in terms of my research or
Oh, I just meant, your research or related work to what we've talked about. Are there any kind of ideas popping into your mind about what we haven't covered?
No, I think it's we covered quite a few topics. I don't know if you're interested, I can talk a little bit about my new study that relates to chronic pain and how we use. Okay, so in our my latest research, I'm here actually in Australia on my Marie Curie postdoctoral fellowship to work on how chronic pain can affect decision making. And the topic of we know that acute pain affects the people's decision making, but it actually hasn't been really studied to what extent this long-term persistent pain can affect decision making. And this is kind of crucial because people who live with chronic pain not only have to make the everyday decisions that everyone has to do, like, for example, like, how do I invest money for the future? But also have to make very important decisions that regard their ongoing treatment. And quite often, those decisions involved short-term and effortful losses or trade-offs between, for example, experiencing short discomfort, pain, or physical effort now to achieve those long-term gains of improved physical activity or regaining function or decreased pain. But what often happens in actual practice, and I'm sure you know it better than I do, is that for patients, sometimes it's very difficult to sort of foresee those short-term sort of losses or efforts. So this is what we're trying to establish. And by using what we also think might be happening is that sometimes people might be interpreting the sensations that are not pain related as pain, and that may somehow maybe contribute to this, perhaps affect decision making. This is something that we're trying to disentangle now. So again, we'll be using the emBODY tool to sort of try to see how participants with chronic pain experience different sensations in the body and related to different emotions and also non-emotional physiological states.
So will the prompt or the cue be the same? Will it be activation and deactivation, or will it be a different?
Yes, but there will be different various emotions, and also some painful sensations. There's stomach ache or a relevant pain stimulator like back pain, etc.
Yes, yeah, that sounds like a really useful study to ask. And as you were saying that, I was also thinking about those trade-offs that people have to make. What I understood you to be saying was that it can be difficult for people, maybe if they're trying to work through pain in order to rehabilitate or to gain more function. Yes. That short term versus long term. I also sometimes hear people describe almost the reverse of that. So let's say someone with fibromyalgia or some chronic fatigue condition, they may say, oh, I really desperately just want to go and dance or do some exercise. So they'll go and, do something energetic, but then know that 2 or 3 days later, they're going to suffer and they're not going to be able to. So it can be, and to know
both ways.
Yeah, both ways. Very difficult.
Yeah. This is actually a very interesting aspect. So we're definitely going to ask that our participants, and also how our sort of little decision-making tasks that involve different types of effort, cognitive effort and physical effort, how it may affect them stuff in several days following the our study.
Okay, that's. I look forward to finding out more about that. Has it started yet? Are you kind of in the development phase or recruiting participants?
That's very early stages. We have a general plan, but we haven't started a recruitment yet. So that's going to be it's quite some time.
Well, if it's done online and you want to recruit people from around the world, feel free to share the link and I'll send it to people. So that's your specific research that you're continuing. Have you got any thoughts about the kind of arena of interoception and research and body awareness research? Where do you think the trends are? What's happening over the next few years, or what would you like to happen?
I think that the sort of hot topic of the past few days have been looking at how should we actually measure interoception, whether the task measures that we have now are accurate, and whether they measure what they are supposed to be measuring. And it's been a really heated discussion online and offline as well regarding those different measures and many different views. There has been quite a few new tools available these days to measure interoceptive accuracy. So this objective ability to detect those different bodily sensations. Which is great that those new tools are being developed, and it's great to see that not only in clinical practice, but has been not only in research, but there has been also more and more studies looking at the practical implications of studying interoception and how sort of increasing interoceptive accuracy or awareness in different clinical populations may affect the well-being and treatment outcomes, which is great. what I like to see more is so going beyond sort of objective measures of interoceptive accuracy. So how well people can feel their own heartbeat, or detection in sort of breathing resistance, and so on and so forth. I would like to see more research that looks at how people actually engage with the interoceptive signals. So what do they make out of it? How do they interpret those signals? Because I think that this is actually a crucial aspect of interoception, that is very much to do with actually what people make out of those sensations, how it affects how they interact with the world around them. And I think that this is a topic that I hope that in the future is going to receive more attention.
So you used the example there of was it breathing resistance or
yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So I can imagine that how people interpret the sensation of air moving in and out of their body, because it can be quite a daunting thing for people to, if they feel their air is being restricted, their breathing is being restricted, or there's some kind of air hunger, or vice versa, or on the other end of the spectrum, if they feel, a breath of fresh air in the morning can feel amazing. So how we experience the feeling of air resistance or breath resistance, as you put it, I can't remember. Yes, I can see that could be massively useful for people with lots of different conditions like anxiety or so on, where there is often a kind of closing in or a tightening or a shortening of the breath.
But sort of this is the point, right? That we do experience those sensations, but some people are just much more sensitive to them, and even when they feel something that is actually quite not so threatening, they may interpret those bodily signals as something that is threatening, that is actually that they feel in danger. Whereas other people may actually have those sensations at a much more higher intensity, that they actually should maybe take care of themselves a little bit more, but they don't really care. They don't interpret it as something threatening, something that they should pay attention to. So there is just a huge variability in how people, not only whether they can accurately feel their bodies, but sort of what they make out of it, whether this is something that they feel is important and they should change their behavior or do something about it, or just they just do not really pay attention, don't feel that it is anything important, and so on. So this is just about this interpretation, those sort of beliefs, and how those different sensations, if they detect it or not, what it leads to. Does it lead to any change in behavior? Does it lead to any sort of feeling of being panicky, etc., etc.?
Yeah, a few things are coming to mind there. I don't know if you've heard of this term hormesis at all.
No.
It's being used sporadically amongst sort of biology researchers and physiology to mean that often if we're exposed to a stressor, there's a kind of a U-shaped curve or a bell-shaped curve in terms of how the dose dependency of it. So often a small dose of a stressor has a benefit in the long term, because it leads to these adaptive changes in the body that make someone more resistant to stress in the future. So exercise is an example of that, or like these food substances like resveratrol from red wine. It seems like a small dose is quite good for us, but a big dose is toxic, or a really small dose doesn't really do anything either. So I can imagine if we've evolved to have these feelings to kind of warn us of a stressor, then there might be a kind of sweet spot, this Goldilocks zone, where being able to handle a certain amount of stressor is useful, but if it goes on for too long and gets too intense, it's not helpful. Or if we can't detect it at all, or if we're not experiencing it at all, then we weaken in some way. I'm just thinking about this, where we started about this, why do we feel these sensations at all, and what use have they got? And I think Lisa Feldman Barrett's lab had a paper last year called, or earlier this year, something along the lines of interoception as control, allostasis as monitoring, or something, or vice versa. I can't remember, but they were trying to say, okay, that our interoceptive experiences are so closely aligned to allostatic control. And, we're always trying to bring our experience back into this settling range for our health. And then it begs the question, what is the healthy range to settle within for any interoceptive experience?
Yeah, this is, I guess, to some extent, subjective, like what people think it's okay and what not. And I guess it's one thing to be able to feel different sensations, to be able to detect them in the first place, but it's another thing of what we make out of them. And even if we, for example, if you suddenly feel that your heart rate is increasing, I mean, there can be loads of causes for it, but you may interpret it that, something is wrong with your heart and you should, go to hospital immediately. Or you may be feeling that, you are just a bit stressed. Or it may be that, I know, got some news and this is sort of a reaction to that. There may be loads of different ways you can loads of different reasons, and how we interpret that, I think, is crucial. And I think just going back to the original point, I think this is something that is missing currently in the field, and I hope there will be more research onto that.
Yeah, me too. I think it is missing in the field, although I see it emerging in these wearable devices like Fitbit and heart rate monitoring tools, which are available linked to smartphones and so on, where they have got kind of HRV. So it's not the person necessarily feeling it to start off with. They're getting some biofeedback on a device. But that can sometimes lead to great distress for people, that this tool is there as a fitness tracker, but then it ends up leading to more anxiety. So maybe the having clearer data or better understanding about what a healthy physiological change actually is to be experiencing over time and in different circumstances, to help reassure people or to help guide people. Because as you say, it's a fitness fanatic might love the fact that their heart is elevated a lot of the time, but there is some research showing that too much endurance exercise, for example, is bad for the heart. So it's a tricky topic.
It is a very tricky topic, and as you mentioned, like all those physiology related apps. We talked recently in the lab about those apps that measure sleep quality, and actually there has been some research already showing that if the app tells you that you slept badly, you feel worse. Whereas if the app tells you that you slept well, regardless of your actual sleep quality, you feel immediately better. So the sort of feedback that we get from the apps may not actually be so beneficial for us necessarily, not always, at least. So it's good that it's out there, but I think it's also important to use those measures stuff wisely, and also maybe sometimes with some margin of error.
Yeah, I'm aware of the time, but you've just unlocked a new kind of perspective for me on the similarity between these apps, like a sleep app, and the kind of feedback it's giving a person, or it's adding an interpretation or an appraisal. And what happens when I spoke to Manos, he used the example of a baby or a child and a parent. So in that situation, a parent is often the app, the biofeedback device, telling the child whether they're tired or not, or oh, you're behaving this way because you're tired, you've had a bad night's sleep, which may be helpful, but I can imagine there are times when the communication isn't quite right, and then the child can end up having a interpretation of their bodily sensations that have been fed back to them by a caregiver that may be not so helpful, just like the the app may make the person feel bad when actually if they were given a different story, they might have felt good for the rest of the day.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very important topic. That's why I hope it's going to get more attention in the future about this interpretation, what we make, the appraisals, and so on and so forth. Because I think that this is actually crucial topic also for our mental health and general well-being.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Aleksandra, and you've been generous with your time. I'd just like to ask where people can find out more about your work, if they want to look into it.
More work. There is Google Scholar if anyone is interested in articles. I also have a website where I sometimes put some information that are more targeted for more general public. It's just, I guess, two main sources.
Thank you, and I'll add links to those in the notes. So that just leaves me to thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing more of your work in the future.
Thank you very much for this this opportunity to talk to you and to share some of my research.
Okay, take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Please remember to subscribe to the In a Sense channel for more information about the role of your bodily sensations and tips for using bodily awareness to improve your well-being.